When we do the talk, always broken up into 4 parts. I'll keep the first part very, very quick, which is my story, just to give you a little bit of background on where I'm coming from, my perspective. I am vastly less experienced than all of you in this particular space, in the nonprofit space in general. But just so that you know, coming in where I'm coming from, but also some of the biases that I may be bringing to the philosophy that I am going to push forward today. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about the data that I think is particularly interesting and informs all of the decisions that I'm making with my own organization over the next decade. Then I'm going to follow that up with further deeper articulation of the actual philosophy about digital storytelling. And then we're going to talk a little bit about tangible next steps. But after all of that is the best part, questions. So there's 3 types of questions in a presentation like this. Number 1 is if I use some piece of jargon or terminology that doesn't make sense to you, then throw the hand up, stop me in my tracks, because if we lose someone a quarter of the way in, halfway in, then that loses all the value of the presentation, right? So stop me if there's anything like that. If there's deeper practical execution questions, we're going to play time for that at the end. That is usually the most valuable part of the talk, so I'm going to try to get through the rest of it super quickly, and you can tell I'm already talking really fast because that's how I tend to speak. And then afterwards, as we're doing the videos and we have a little break before you guys go on with the rest of the day, if you have like a personal question or just something that wasn't addressed over the course of the 30-40 minutes that we have together, feel free to come up to me afterwards because I love teaching and talking about this stuff. So my name's Aaron Watson. That little thing's cutting off a little bit, but like I said, CEO, founder of Piper Creative. Piper Creative is a digital agency that helps produce media for other brands. A majority of our clients are B2B service providers, but it is a use case and a skill set that we see applicable and used by Fortune 500 companies, startups, nonprofits, mid-sized companies, all sorts of different backgrounds. It is a broadly applicable framework. We use that framework to not only build the agency, but to also start an event called the Going Deep Summit. It's an annual conference held here in Pittsburgh, akin to a TED or a South by Southwest. Sloane is actually going to be speaking at the next one. We're super excited about that. It's in March, end of March 2020. Great excuse to come back to Pittsburgh. But it is a single day, hundreds of people in attendance, coming together through 3 themes: expand your mind, fill your heart, and grow your tribe, accessing stories, pieces of information that are relevant and deeply human across a wide spectrum of topics and great speakers. And the vehicle that we've used to make both of these businesses viable and a reality is our content creation, and the backbone of that is a podcast called Going Deep with Aaron Watson. Sloane has also been a guest on that as well. But we have hundreds of thousands of downloads of that show, more than 400 episodes, and it's been downloaded in more than 120 countries. And the kind of light bulb that comes on associated with that is it is all produced with gear that is just a couple of $1,000s all in, and that's because we've upgraded as time has gone by. The distribution, the tools associated with getting your message out there are more accessible than any other time in human history. And so what we feel like as Piper, as this kind of young startup tech-enabled company, is that we're really stumbled onto the secret of how easy this can be, how accessible this can be, and it all starts with the proper mindset and philosophy, so that's why we're going to get into that. But sometimes when we talk about this, people say, how did you get into this? Well, I went to the University of Pittsburgh, I studied economics, no tangible expert training in media. That's a very important part of this. It's not like I spent 10 years working under some TV producer or high-level media maven. It was self-taught. It's incredibly learnable. We see media creation, this digital storytelling, as a muscle. And the great thing about talking to a group like this is you guys have great stories to tell. Like some people, they're looking at an emotionless, heartless spreadsheet all day, and they're coming to me like, Aaron, what do I even say about this? You guys have the stories. It's incredibly exciting to be in the shoes, in the seats where you guys are sitting. So you have to start with the presumption that you are ahead of the pack in pursuing this digital storytelling strategy. But the studying of economics at Pittsburgh will come up again in just a little bit. I I also am deeply influenced by a media theorist by the name of Marshall McLuhan. You're not supposed to put quotes on your slides because everyone just starts reading the quote and stops listening to you, so I'm going to read the quote to everyone while we all look at it. Societies have been shaped more by the nature of the media by which men communicate than by the content of the communication. All media works over us completely and leaves no part of us untouched, unaffected, and unaltered. The medium is the message. Has anyone ever heard the medium is the message before? Got two? Love it. Basically, the presumption here is the same message packaged for radio versus packaged for TV versus packaged in a book versus packaged in modern forms of digital media are going to have inherent differences that are baked into the storytelling that is happening. It's going to be in there before you're even making the conscious decisions of exactly what word to use, exactly what graphic to use, exactly what to show someone. So it's important to start with those presumptions, understand those as you're making decisions of how to talk about the important work that you're doing. Some of the presumptions that are baked in to this modern form of media, which is using digital devices to storytell, is broken into three important shifts from old media to new media. The first is production. So as you can see here, Hannah's set up two cameras. I've got this little lav mic right here on my shirt. It is incredibly easy. It's going to be incredibly seamless and accessible for us to produce these videos for each of you right around the corner over there. Doesn't mean that the equipment still requires investment. Hannah has dozens of years of practical experience in visual media production that allow her to do that. But if you even think about what's happening here, as recently as 10, 20 years ago, this was a $100,000 television studio or some cumbersomely inaccessible technology setup in order to record something like this, and now it's seamless. And if you really boil it down, we're going above and beyond because this is what we do, but she has my phone. The phone in Hannah's hand is also capable of recording the entire thing. And so as you leave here, recognizing how accessible the media is in terms of actual production is a really, really important thing to embrace. The next element is distribution. This is back to some 20-year-old kid in the city of Pittsburgh being able to record interviews and have them be downloaded in 120 different countries. That is only possible today. That was not possible 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. There were gatekeepers. There was every single obstacle and burden imaginable to getting that level of distribution. And now we can publish to some of the world's largest platforms for free. Good. The last part is audience choice. So we've talked about being on the production side, but on the other side, those that are paying attention, those that this media can get in front of, are now absolutely drowning in choices. Just the other day, Disney launched Disney Plus. I don't know if you've seen the just full rollout that they've run to get more than 10 million initial subscribers for their platform. But there's Netflix, there's Amazon Prime Video, there's Apple coming, there's all the social media platforms. People are drowning in choice and no longer constrained in where their consumption can be happening. So that's another important element to be thinking about when you're constructing your digital storytelling philosophy. The data behind all of this is really fascinating. 88% of people use a second digital device while watching TV. So that means the commercial comes on and they're looking down at their phone. They're not watching a TV commercial. So this isn't just a few of us, or it's like my guilty pleasure. It's everybody. Okay. Similarly, nearly 75% of all U.S. adults are using YouTube in some capacity. So the notion that this is like where the kids' attention is or the younger generation's attention is actually fundamentally misguided. It is pervasive. It is here in the present right now, as opposed to some sort of trend or thing off in the distance. It is where the attention is right now in the present. Similarly, what this graph indicates is the expansion of digital media consumption over the last decade. And what you're basically seeing is that people are spending about the same amount of time on laptops and desktops, but mobile, which is the green bar, is just expanding to more than double the total digital media consumption that's happening. So that is during the TV commercial, someone's looking down at their phone. But it's also just the fact that that thing is with you at all times. You're going to the restroom, you're waiting for the meeting to start, you're in between things. It is filling all these little voids, which is an opportunity from an attention standpoint for you to be in front of someone during so many different periods of their day. Similarly, is this battery not working? Oh, there we go, sorry. TV is not really going down, but mobile is expanding rapidly, and in 2018, mobile consumption surpassed TV consumption. Similarly, image sharing wasn't even really a thing in 2010, but with primarily Instagram, but smart cameras in your smartphones, it has expanded to more than 1 billion people have uploaded an image to the internet. That is a staggering number. And selfishly, as the podcast guy, podcast monthly active listeners, or our monthly active users are expanding. Nowhere near as big as some of that other stuff, but I would argue that that is poised to continue to be on the rise. So, like I said earlier, I am the economics major. When we think about where value is driven, economics teaches you that as supply of something goes up, the demand for that naturally goes down. And so value is derived by the scarcity of something. So in a world where 1 billion people are uploading images and more people have podcasts and everyone has a YouTube channel and all these things are happening, what has become scarce in that new supply and demand curve? Time, but also trust. So trust basically says, back in the day when there was only, this number's blocked off, but in 1959 there were only 3 TV channels, and FM radio wasn't even really a thing. Most audio waves were sent over the air by AM radio. Then 30 years later, the 3 TV channels only went up to 33 TV channels on average for someone in the US. But today, there are 23 million YouTube channels and almost 700,000 active podcasts happening. Right? That's a staggering change. So the message is no longer scarce. Someone going on the TV and saying, choosy moms choose Jif, and being taken at face value, that is completely over. And so now trust is the scarce thing. Whether that is a funder saying, I don't know which direction to go because I get bombarded by so many different opportunities for where these dollars can be allocated. A consumer deciding, where do I spend my dollars? What products do I want to spend that money on? There's an inherent lowered bar for trust, and that's the same thing that you see when someone's scrolling through a news feed on one of their apps incredibly quickly. They're very quickly making a trust interest decision and then moving on to the next thing. So our thesis as it pertains to how to earn that trust, that incredibly scarce thing in this age of 23 million YouTube channels and 600,000 podcasts and all these crazy numbers, is through consistency. Consistency means that putting a already limited budget and allocating that into one single piece of media is a mistake. Going over the top with some sort of high video production to create this one perfect commercial the way you would back when Choosy Moms Choose Jif, to make that first impression and put everything behind that single thing, is an outdated way of thinking about storytelling, an outdated way of thinking about the media that you might be producing, and instead the consistency of showing up regularly, showing the work going on, showing the incremental progress, showing the values and the beliefs and the efforts that you are embedding into your organization on a regular basis is what is going to engender the trust from the people around you that you need to buy into what you're doing, that creates the results you're looking for. This is proven in B2B services, this is proven in consumer products, and this is proven in large nonprofits, small nonprofits, such as yourselves, who are looking to build a brand that is resonant with the people that can change outcomes for your organization. The way that we approach this at Piper, and Piper is less than 2 years old, we are less than 10 full-time people, is since inception, we've produced 400 podcast episodes. We have more than 200 YouTube videos posted, and just in the last year, 300 original LinkedIn posts as that small organization. Our goal by the end of the year is to produce 100 pieces of original content in a single week. Okay? So if you think about what's happening right now, we're producing this original content. In addition to the video that's being recorded, there are Instagram stories being shot as well. I can break that all out in specificity. But right now we're in the 70 to 80 piece per week range, and our goal by the end of 2019 is to get to 100. 2020, our goal is to get to 300 pieces of original content in a week. Now that sounds wild. That's like inaccessibly busy. I have 10,000 other things to do, Aaron. Like, you are spitting some nonsense at me right now. But the truth is, we are seeing staggering results as a byproduct of this. We're seeing blind faith ticket sales for the Going Deep Summit. We are seeing increasing revenues for our business. We are seeing results for the clients that we serve. And just in an almost intangible way, the same way that swoosh, we all know we're talking about Nike in a brand building way. There's just an intangible but really effective wave that is propelling our efforts forward through the pursuit of this exact strategy. Our primary driver of that, and I would humbly suggest an area of focus for each and every one of you, should be LinkedIn. In the history of different social media platforms, 2008 to 2010, Facebook had its moment of really significance for just an organic, which basically means no paid spend behind it, post on Facebook. Late 2009 into 2011 was Twitter. 2012 into 2014 was Snapchat. 2015 into 2017 was Instagram. And I would argue that late 2018 into 2020 will be the chapter of LinkedIn.
TikTok.
Don't even.
That's coming. You're right. You're right. LinkedIn predates Facebook, but LinkedIn sold for $20 billion to Microsoft in, I believe, 2017. I might be getting my years confused. And the part of that acquisition was there is fantastic data. I'm getting into like the B2B services side of things, but the data validated that like this person really is the VP of whatever at whatever place, cross-referenced by their network, is just gold for their CRM and their other services. But because they're investing it as their social media platform to compete with Facebook and Google and Twitter, they're making a significant investment, which has included the enablement of visual media to be published on LinkedIn that you couldn't do as early as 2017. So before that, it was just a text-based post. It was basically a digital resume of sorts, and it's transitioned into a social media platform.
And I'm being told also you should have an organization, right? Like, do you see the value in not only LinkedIn individual, but organizations?
Yeah, so we could spend an hour literally just on LinkedIn strategy if you guys want to, but a company page created, validated with everyone in your organization, having it linked in their profile. And that's also just another channel where publishing can happen. So when I talk about the gross number of posts that we're making to LinkedIn on a weekly basis, that is a daily post from me, that is a near daily post from Hannah, and whatever content that we have left over, because we're just taking so much in, we're then publishing to our company page as well.
This is why I'm getting 10 emails a day from people to join me on LinkedIn.
Yes.
Bingo.
Yeah. We're going to set it up tonight.
Yeah.
Just so there is like a news feed just like Facebook.
I know, but I'm again, like, if
We'll
I
check
did
it
it
out
was like,
as soon as you start.
okay,
Yeah,
cool.
go ahead.
Yep.
You know, like, corporate people, like, who looks at that? Like, seriously.
All right.
You're looking for a job.
Focus,
Yeah.
ladies, focus.
So how? Because that 100 seemed crazy. I don't know what number on a per week basis you might be at, but regardless, it is daunting to try to figure out how to get more. So I'm going to talk through how to start doing that more effectively. One of the starting points is the 4C framework that we teach to everyone trying to make this happen, which is to start with consume. So if you haven't been on LinkedIn in a while, you rolled your eyes at it, the starting point isn't to try to make that perfect LinkedIn post that's going to knock everyone's socks off. The starting point is to spend the time on LinkedIn on a daily basis. Because of that, whatever allocation of the time in your day, I know everyone's busy, I know everyone is juggling 10,000 other things, but in those marginal hours, in those marginal minutes of your day, allocating an additional 5, 10, 15 minutes to consuming on LinkedIn versus consuming on one of those other platforms is how you start to learn the language of that platform and what's relevant. And being a thoughtful consumer, not just, man, that's cool or boring or interesting or funny or whatever, but hey, I like this. Why did I like this? Hey, I didn't like this. Why didn't I like this? And taking that discerning, critical eye to the content that you're seeing there, and then moving into the second two C's, which is comment and curate. So as you're doing this consumption, you can build upon the learning and the absorption of ideas that you're having just through consuming by curating interesting links or pieces that you're coming across. If you find someone who might also be in the nonprofit space, but not particularly the area where you're making your impact, sharing what they're doing. It's not a zero-sum game where their benefit is at the expense of my own, but sharing these other inspiring stories, these other inspiring pieces of media brings that attention your way as a tasteful, thoughtful curator of ideas, of pieces of media, and then simultaneously thoughtfully commenting on the posts that you're coming across. So that does two things. Number one, the beauty of a group like this is you now have a network of like-minded individuals that you can call upon, and you're going to go back to your respective parts of the country and be able to message with one another, learn from one another, deepen the value that you can provide to one another, as any good social network will do. But as you're continuing to look for those people that can be in your corner, that can be aware of what you're doing or what have you, those people are also sharing links, posting original content, sharing information about what they're up to, and a thoughtful comment on their post actually goes a surprisingly large way. So, Bob, whoever that you know that you want to get on the radar of, when he shares an exciting piece of news about the thing he's been working on, not just going, nice, congrats, neato, but hey, that's so exciting. That is such a big step for what you're up to. Congratulations. I hope that success continues into the next year. Bob doesn't get 10,000 comments. Bob gets 3, 5, 7 comments. This is just the average numbers of the internet. So he's reading every single comment that comes on any of his posts, and you are now getting on the radar of these people, these people that you can't seem to get the attention of. You can't seem to figure out how to get their antenna up to the stuff that you're working on. Thoughtfully commenting on everything that they're doing, not coming in and being like, hey, this is great and you should support my thing, but just acknowledging their existence, the work that they're doing, is a great way to get on someone's radar.
Then what happens next? You've gotten on their radar. Who sees it? Nice Bob, that's great, never hear from him. Other people, how does it amplify what you're doing?
So the incalculable, like you think of physics, it's like, okay, if I push this hard this way, I get this very measurable result on the other end. Nothing in the media, marketing, branding side of things is ever so one-to-one, is ever so formulaic. So the follow-up to that is your profile does need to be optimized with good copywriting to say very clearly and concisely, this is who I am, this is what I do, and here is the one call to action where you can learn more or go and support me. 5 call to actions in a LinkedIn profile is effectively 0 call to actions, just as anything. If at the end of this if I told you all to do 7 things at the end of my talk, you wouldn't do any of them, right? But if I say there's absolutely one thing that you should be doing, and that is going and liking the video that we made with Sloane about the Going Deep Summit, there's actually a pretty high likelihood that I'll convert some of you to do that, right? Yeah. So in that same sense, yeah, or attend. Well, that's the gateway. That's the gateway to attending. So in that sense, optimizing your profile, optimizing the other elements of your digital identity with very clear language, very concise language, and a singular call to action where you want that person to proceed. That can be a little different if you have maybe like, here's how to volunteer, here's how to contribute. I think that's
on my profile.
On your profile. So
I'm talking about if I comment on some guy named Bob who I like what just happened.
Yes.
Okay. That drives him back to my profile or others back to
right. So think about this. I'm Bob. I open the app. Notification.
Yeah.
Comment. Or maybe there's 3 comments. This comment is easily the best comment. Who is this? Click.
Okay.
And now I'm on your profile, and now you have that opportunity to convert. And no conversion is 100%. No conversion, I mean, if you can figure out how to do 50% conversion, I want your number because we're hiring at Piper. But even converting at that low rate, you're entering people into that top of the funnel that might now be coming across what you're doing and understanding how to learn.
It's networking. It's digital networking.
Bingo. Yeah. Bingo. Everything about this, and it's embedded in everything that we're saying, everything that we're talking about doing in a digital context is exactly what you would do in a human person-to-person context. It's just there to be had in digital. Not many people are appreciating how pervasive it is, how big the opportunity is, how you can be doing it in those 5 minutes before your next meeting starts, when I can't necessarily like run across the street and go find someone else, right? You can do it right there by your side. Cool?
These are great things for your high school volunteers. and your senior citizens, stay-at-home people, I just tell them like everything that I post, wherever, whatever platform it is.
Yeah.
You know, to drive that up.
So we have folks, and I talk to job seekers, I talk to established business owners, I talk to everyone in between. If they literally never get past comment and curate, they're good. Like that's really doing more than what most people are doing already to drive results. The create part, the making the original content part, is what comes next after you're hitting those basic fundamentals. And the create level is informed by the first 3 C's. So if you're consuming good stuff, if you're on LinkedIn, you're saying, this is good LinkedIn content and this is bad, that's gonna help your own content on LinkedIn be good and not bad. And if you're curating stuff that is interesting and engaging and effective and inspiring, then you're gonna have a better collection of things to then reference when either you or someone on your team says, what are we making? You point to those things, right? And so all these things seamlessly fit together to inform the eventual creation that you'll be doing, but you need to recognize that it's all connected and it is a muscle that is built through the consistent execution of these different elements. Cool? I see writing, so I'm not gonna change it until you guys are done writing. Good? So, what do I talk about? Now, back to the notion of choosy moms choose Jif, or some reductive tagline or reductive kind of pitch for the offering or the thing that you need. The mistake that gets made when we buy this presumption of we need a large quantity of things posted, we need a large quantity of content. The mistake that gets made is that every single one of those pieces of content is the right hook, is that hard ask, that hard pitch for, we need someone to come out today and help. Making that ask, as opposed to, let me tell you about this amazing person that came into our organization. Let me tell you what I learned today doing what I do, and not necessarily making that call to action a part of the post at all. The same way that your comment of just thoughtfully acknowledging someone else's post, think about your original content serving that same purpose. Just making someone come across and go, huh, that's interesting, or that's beautiful, or that's inspiring. And then leaving it to them to maybe go to your profile, leaving it to them to maybe go click through and go down the path that you've built and the digital identity that you've curated to help them understand how to engage with what you're doing. Not seeing every single one of those posts as the opportunity to come in with a hard pitch. Part of that with my own content, how that manifests is, so that on the left, that's Chili. That's Chili Dog. It's a seven-pound miniature poodle. This is me playing Ultimate Frisbee, and I'm a fan of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So as a part of those pieces of content that we're making, it's not everything. Like if all I did was talk about this stuff, then no one would take me seriously as a marketer or a business person, right? But because I have these legitimate, authentic components of my life that I get to talk about, it is a part of those 100 pieces of content that we put out. And so similarly, just as you have very kind of real, tangible, hey, we just executed this thing, hey, we just accomplished this thing, here's the actual blocking and tackling of our specific niche, our specific corner of the world. If you have family and your family's in the office on a Saturday, like cleaning the bathrooms or taking the trash out or any other element of your life, it is okay to share those things. Now, there's personal choices. Hey, I don't like to put my family on social media. I'm not at all pushing anyone to do an element of that that they're not personally comfortable. But if there are elements of your life outside of this work and this mission that you're on, sharing those components actually creates a more well-rounded picture of who you are on any of the platforms. So I'll give you an example of that. I showed you the platform where I was talking about all the choices that audiences have. They can go to Netflix, Disney+, this, that, and the other thing. I'm also a really big basketball fan. You didn't see an NBA logo up there because there's no Pittsburgh basketball team, but I'm a very big basketball fan. The NBA became the first professional sports league to make the NBA TV something that you could buy solo for $6.99 a month online. They're the first platform to ever just stream their games and make that accessible as an independent product. And this is an example of a media company going direct to consumer, not going through a cable company or a third party in order to share their product. And that's a really big deal in the larger context of media and marketing. And given that that's part of my identity, I was perfectly poised to make a piece of content referencing how the NBA is indicative of the same strategy that the lawyer down the street should be employing, that the nonprofit down the street should be employing. So finding that connection point, and we're going to get to this later with the thing that Sloane alluded to, is your ability to put that unique spin on the topics that everyone might already be discussing on these different platforms. LinkedIn, people are there aspirationally, they're looking for strategies for success, things that work, but being able to put it through the lens of not just the work that you're doing, but the other interests that you have is what gives you that deeply authentic and distinct voice in the marketplace of ideas and posts, because it is something that only you are equipped to be saying, as opposed to just the same recycled platitudes that everyone else is pushing through. Does that make sense?
Can you give an example? My 2-year-old eating falafel.
Yes. That's exactly it. So
You put that on Salt Landing or on your own personal?
On self-landing. Because she's super cute. She had a huge piece of falafel in her mouth and then tahini sauce all over. I love it.
Yeah, but that's what people love, right? They love that.
am I running out of time, Sloane?
No, that was like a 30, you said talk for 30, and I just meant to be listening to talk.
Okay, then I gotta go fast. Last part is last part is reply to every single comment. So the flip side is if someone took the time out of their day to comment on one of your posts, think about that. Think about that choice, that they've made the decision to acknowledge, even if they're saying congrats or neato, reply to every single comment. There's 2 reasons for that. On one end of the spectrum, the algorithm rewards engagement. Every single one of these platforms want to find posts that have conversations that are built off of them and rewards those posts with greater organic reach. The same post, same exact content, same exact image with 1 comment versus 49 comments, the 49 comment one is going to be distributed to more people for free by the platform.
Does that include Facebook?
All of them.
Oh crap, we're never getting off these devices. No. And then when does the conversation stop?
Here it comes, because that's the second part of the reply. The second part of reply to every comment is if Sloane replies with a thoughtful comment to a post of mine, and either I make some sort of empty reply or I don't acknowledge it, then the next time we see each other in person, it's like, oh, I saw the thing and like I replied to it, and I'm just dead face. I don't know what you're talking about. Then I've submarined the start of a conversation in digital and failed to enable it to continue in the real world. Everything that happens with us with those 100 pieces of content is the enabler of the conversations that happen in person. Because we're putting out those 100 pieces of content and most of the other people are putting 3 or 0 or next to none, it is really, really easy. When I come across that acquaintance, that casual encounter, it's like the tables tilted in my direction because there's all the context on what we're working on and who's speaking at the next summit and what's happening in our world. And there isn't that context there. And it's not in a selfish way, like I don't want to talk about the other person, but that person finds it easier to talk about the work that we both know about as opposed to starting from square one and trying to build the entire tower of context about their work from nothing. And so, if it would be valuable to you that in most of the rooms that you entered from a networking or fundraising capacity, to have a lot of people really understand what you're doing before you even start talking to one another, and then getting to build off of second base as opposed to starting on first, then the content makes a ton of sense.
But like, isn't there a point, I mean, because there's people like, that have too many posts, like Facebook is where I mostly am at. I just block, like, you know, I don't want to see any more from them. I mean, what's the tipping point, I guess, where you're just annoying and every day nobody wants to look at you and, you know, look at your posts anymore?
So the essence of annoying comes from making every post the ask. If I'm entertaining...
I mean, it's just a lot of posts. I mean, for me anyways, it doesn't always have to be the ask. It's just, you know, well, you're filling up my feed with too many posts and I don't want to see any more from this person or this organization because there's too many
messages.
It's just clutter. It's not an ask.
Yeah. So the nice thing about it is those pieces of content are distributed across a bunch of different platforms, and people do get to choose their own adventure. There's people that follow on LinkedIn, follow on Twitter, aren't subscribed on Instagram, aren't subscribed on YouTube, and that's their prerogative, and that is the savvy audience that opts into what they want and opts out of what they don't want. And there is at some point a diminishing return to that propensity of stuff that's put out. But just from our experience, there's a lot of people that say, yeah, I see all of them. They don't necessarily consume everything. They aren't sitting there and like listening and processing every single second of what's putting out. But if you're trying to build the actual skill set and the actual muscle for this storytelling, being able to pitch your thing better than everyone else, being able to have more people in the market understand the important work that you're doing, the trade-off of whatever marginal person on the end of the spectrum opting out, for everyone that the new post could potentially pick up, I would argue is strongly in the other direction. I don't know of an organization less than 25 people that is capable of putting out too much content. That's my real honest belief. I just don't think, I think you could have 25 people doing it full time, and I don't think you're capable of putting out too much content. Okay. But our bias is strongly towards more, and I would kind of point to the modern either individual or small business or larger business brands that have seen the greatest ascendance. There is a commonality that they've all made a significant investment into that storytelling and into that content. And part of that experience of putting out that much is also the iteration of, hey, this didn't work well, hey, this did. More of the second thing. Hey, these next 4 posts went out, these 2 didn't convert, these 2 did, more of the first 2.
So it's like I look at the numbers and I have to like somehow from brand accept that that's what sometimes people want to see, and so I'll do it.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it's because you want to get results for all the families that Hello Neighbor serves. Like at the end of the day, that is the motivating force, as opposed to some overly self-aggrandizing, self-promotional instinct. And what Sloane just articulated is another meta pattern that we see way bigger than Piper or anything happening in Pittsburgh or anything. It's called Naked Brands. There's a whole series of blog posts by someone named David Perel, who's also speaking at the next Going Deep Summit. And the concept is that LeBron James has a health and wellness company, he has a media company, he has other instances that he runs, and I bet no one in this room can name the name of any of those companies, but we all know who LeBron James is. And if you go through every single vertical, beauty and cosmetics, apparel, music, every single element of culture and society is now being increasingly driven by the individual. Intellectually, everyone who follows the Hello Neighbor stuff can understand that there are other people helping that organization to do what they do, even if Sloane happens to be the face of it or the identity of it. But that is something that we are biologically programmed to be resonant with. It took a lot of work for the golden arches to mean something to people. It doesn't take as much for a face and a voice and a personality to mean something to someone, because it's what we are biologically programmed to attach ourselves to. And so leaning into that and recognizing that for the greater good of this organization, my voice or whoever our spokesperson's voice is, saying it on a consistent basis, showing up, building this media muscle, embracing this uncomfortable space of creating digital media to tell that story of your organization does get results. It gets results in every single one of these cultural pillars, and it will for you.